Hello, welcome back. In the last set of videos, we have created our first VUGen script, and that VUGen script is basically recording the following activities: that it is logging in, and then it is going to browse a course and it log out. So now the script is ready. Now we are going to see how to replay the script, and then what are the options that we have while replaying the script. Those options are called runtime setting. Alright, and this is a script. You can access the runtime setting by clicking here. Let's explore what we have in our runtime setting. The first one is run logic. How many iterations I want to run. If I make it 2, then whatever there in that action, those things will be executed sequentially 2 times. That means it's going to start with this web underscore URL module, and it's going to finish it web underscore link, and then come back and redo the same steps again. And then let's say I give 2 iterations to complete. Then the next setting gives you how I'm going to do that. My first iteration is going to finish, and then immediately after the first iteration, without waiting anything, should I start? If that is the case, then check on this radio button. If you want to pace your iteration, so then this is the option, that if with this configuration your second iteration is going to start after 60 seconds of finishing first iteration. However, if you give a random, then it will give you 2 numbers. So that means the second iteration is going to start anytime between 60 to 90 second. Alright, then if you click on the last option, the second iteration is going to start at a fixed interval, and that fixed interval is 60 seconds. That means irrespective of iteration number 1 complete or not, the second iteration is going to start, the consequent iterations are going to start in every 60 seconds if you choose this option. Similarly, you can make it random, so that the consequent iteration can start anytime between 60 to 90 seconds. Next option is log. This logging is necessary to debug the script. If I click on extended log, then I can see the data returned by the server, even the complete TCP trace that if I want I can get by clicking on this advanced trace. Okay, so enable logging when you want to debug your script, but whenever you want to run the benchmark, then it's a good idea to disable, because if you start logging in all those things, your script is going to take more resource. So sometimes the results may not be reliable. Okay, so the best practice is to disable logging when you run the actual benchmark. Next parameter is think time. So let's say this is my my login activity, and then after the login activity finish, so that the login activity is going to finish at line number 27. So the script, the current script, whatever is written, that means just after I log in, I immediately go and click on the test course. That may not be realistic, because a user wants to see something what is there on the page before he or she clicks on another link. Alright, so therefore what we need to do, we can put a think time. So for example, some think time being recorded at this point, okay, but there is no think time between the log submit form and the test course. Let's say we put a think time, and let's say that think time is like this. Let's say we put a think time of 11 second. Okay, so even if you put the think time for 11 second, however, if you in the runtime setting, if you say ignore think time, then all your think times will be ignored. Okay, when it's going to run, VueGen is not going to care about whatever you put here. Okay, so that means the configuration, the runtime setting will take precedence over the API calls. Alright, and when it is necessary, you want to debug the script. While you debugging the script, you do not want to necessarily wait for 11 seconds and go to the next step. So ignore think time is a good idea when you want to debug the script. However, in the benchmark scenario, you can give and this kind of configuration, all the configurations I think is self-explanatory, and if you have some doubts, just hover your mouse on top of that, then you can get a lot of hints here. Okay, and I don't want to really go in detail about those things, but this is how you can do. During the benchmark time, we are going to use a think time that is not kind of a constant. So the think time, instead of having a fixed think time, it is always recommended to have some sort of randomized think time, and with with some minimum value and maximum value, and usually and those randomized think time follow some kind of Gaussian distribution pattern. And then some additional attributes. This additional attributes is helpful when you want to test some application, not the browser based application, but some kind of app where you can give some command line argument when you start that program. Okay, and in the miscellaneous you have multiple options, that if error occurred in the script, then you have option to continue, or you have option to fail it, or you can generate a snapshot at the point of time when that error occurred, so that you can visualize later why that error occurred, and this will help you in debugging. Whenever you run 100 users, you can run 100 processes. If you click on this, if you choose this, then you will run a v user per thread, and also there will be a configuration parameter that we will see in the controller, how many threads that we are going to run per process. Okay, and the best practice is to run v user as thread when you run the web applications, because if you run as thread, it will take less CPU and less memory footprint, and therefore the load generating clients are more scalable. However, in certain application, in certain protocol, it's a good idea to run as process to avoid thread contentions and so on. All right, and then by clicking on this thing, you can define an each action, okay, whatever we're seeing here, as a transaction. Okay, so I think I don't really care about these two things. What I do, I will create my own transaction, which I'm going to show you in the very next video. And then data format extension, don't worry about this thing right now. We will have a complete separate video explaining about data format extension, okay, and custom web request, right? And also you can simulate a network speed by clicking on this thing, and this is very important, because whenever you are testing a web application, don't assume that your users are privileged enough to have 2 gigabyte per second internet connection. So that's why, like, for how the application behaving at a 128 kbps, if you want to understand that, then check this radio button, and then you select what kind of speed that you want to choose. So in that case, the view gen, whenever it's going to generate the load, is going to take care of those bandwidth considerations. Then the browser emulation, that by clicking on this, like, you can choose what kind of browser that you want to emulate. Okay, and if you choose use custom, then it's probably going to emulate all those browsers. Then you can emulate browser cache, and browser cache is what normally people used to do. All the static content will be cached in the browser cache. Alright, so therefore if you do not simulate browser cache, if you run multiple times, then for the same user, for the multiple iterations, it's going to unnecessarily, the VUGen is going to get those static resources, which is not what is realistic, because if you have a real browser, then you should have cached those things. Okay, so therefore you can simulate browser cache, and if you want to simulate a browser cache, also you can give the values, like, what is the cache size and so on. This is called internet protocol, that content check, like if you want to enable the content check during the replay, then you can click on this new application, and then you enable what kind of rules, like if you want to go to the home page, what you should see there. Okay, so you can basically give the new rule, and we'll see in some of the videos that okay, you search for this text, like if you want to say login, then just see like login happened or not. Okay, so that is what kind of checks that you can do. Okay, so let's say this is your corporate firewall, and you are behind the corporate firewall. So this is the VU, so this is the VU gen, and then somewhere here there is a server. Okay, so then basically if you want, in order to connect to the server, VueGen has to go through a proxy server. Through the proxy server, then it can go to the outside network. So essentially in that kind of scenario, if you are behind a proxy server, then you have to give what is the proxy server address. Okay, so if you give this huge proxy server, then you have to give the HTTP address of the proxy server, the port number, and so on. So in that way, like VueGen is going to forward those requests to the proxy server, and the proxy server is going to get those response back to the VueGen. And then there's a preference, so that you can do so sometimes whenever we're going to generate the, so while generating the load, we also need some additional statistics that we are going to see in the very last chapter, when we're going to whenever we are going to start analyzing the result. And there we need sometimes hits per second, how many bytes per response that is coming per second. So those kind of calculations that will be done if you select these options. If you hover around these options, then you can get more hints about the functionality. Then download filter. In the download filter, sometimes whenever we want to access a say web page, and that web page might have some images or certain things that comes from some other servers. Okay, so whenever you're going to whenever you're going to do a load test, it is not really recommended to stress other people's server. Okay, so that means if my images are coming from Wikipedia, then if I want to run 1 million times, if I simulate 1 million users, then unnecessarily you are going to stress the Wikipedia website with 1 million requests. So that is not desirable, and also that is not really a good practice. So what you can do, you can come here and select exclude address from the list, and then you can add the URL, that is wikipedia.com. In that case, if you have recorded any images that is coming from wikipedia.com, then by this option, VueGen during the runtime is not going to get those images. So this is all about runtime setting, and runtime setting is really important, and a lot of time people do not understand runtime setting. They run the test and then they get different results, and that doesn't really make sense why they are getting those things. So therefore, just go through this runtime setting properly and set it up, so that you can have confidence on your performance results.